Hello, everybody. I'm coming to you from my new set, technically, except it's the pandemic, and so I might be going back to stay with my parents, and so I might not have my set anymore, but it's all right. Something that I've been really getting into in the past few years is astrology, and not just astrology of like, oh my god, like, you know, what's your sun sign? Because that's what we mainly identify as, but actual astrology as in like your whole chart and like where all of your planetary placements are, because yes, you have all of the planets in some type of placement in a zodiac sign. And I thought it'd be interesting to combine my interest in astrology, which now that I think about it probably came from Sailor Moon, with my interest in video games, because I keep up with video games pretty well, I would say. I have one of my best friends, Crystal Dwan, to help me, and she has been helping me compile this very comprehensive and well thought out list of recommendations for each zodiac sign of video games. Crystal, do you want to just quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, oh my gosh. Ooh. Hi, my name's Crystal. I'm a professional tarot reader and I guess general content consultant. So I do help people kind of make sense of their lives or their business or their relationships or whatever through the lens of tarot. And because I studied tarot, I also know a lot about astrology. I mostly got into, honestly, astrology because I was so fascinated by how it correlates to tarot, and then that became its own monster. And now here I am today making jokes and memes sometimes about these systems that really appeal to me and really explain the archetypal nature of humans. Haha.
Some people might think, why is it that you like both this weird metaphysical esoteric shit and you like video games at the same time? But for me, I think the connection is actually quite easy because I've always grown up really enjoying mythology and religious studies and just knowing about like other people's belief systems and the way that they categorize people. Video games are full of references to mythology and religion, so we recommend that you look up what your natal chart is.
The idea is that if you look at what all the planets were in when you were born, not just the sun, because we go by the solar calendar, which is why, you know, every month, every person who was born on December 4th every year is the same sign. But every planet moves a little differently. So the planets were all in different signs when you were born. So say if you're a Sagittarius sun, but you have a Taurus moon, someone born even a few days after you is going to have a different moon, and that's going to affect a different part of their, like, just general soul's journey and such. And so it's more accurate to try to get comprehensive. It'd be like saying, oh, all you are is your eye color, but maybe you have a different skin color and hair color and all this stuff. It's like a more holistic look at everything. And so when you're interested in something, looking at just one part of you isn't comprehensive enough.
This is kind of what other tarot readers on YouTube and also what a lot of just astro readers do on YouTube as well. But I did put thought into it thinking about that, like, okay, like I do think a sun sign can apply to this, but also we could consider the rising sign and also the moon sign, because the rising is about your inner child, right? Like it's kind of about it. I don't know if that's how you would interpret it.
It's kind of like, I feel like it's kind of the face you wear to the earth. And in terms of the inner child, I think it's like, it's the face you're most familiar with. So it's like the show you're used to putting on. And a kid, in a way, when we're kids, we do know a lot about or we learn a lot about like how to interact with the world through that lens. So that is your rising or ascendant sign.
And I also am including the moon sign because from what I understand, the moon kind of means your emotional side, your needs, and also how you act when you're comfortable. I definitely think that the moon is also applicable, right? Because most of us, we play video games in the comfort of our homes, unless you're playing mobile games, and that's cool too. But
you're like, oh, I just really like this. You don't have to justify why. You just really, oh, yeah. And so I think that is why it like just hits on that the core central part of you that's very different than the outer packaging and stuff.
And then one extra thing that if you really want to be advanced or be more curious about astrology is to look at the zodiac ruler of your 5th house sign. That doesn't mean looking at a planetary placement. It just means that looking at from your ascendant or rising sign, going 5 signs over, basically.
In general, I think the 5th house is just a nice look into what you kind of give a shit about, in a sense, and what will naturally appeal to you that will bring you immense joy and like, I love doing this and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, so hopefully you can tell that there are a bunch of different ways to approach why you would like a video game, maybe, right? Or just like any piece of media in general.
Yeah, because we're correlating how video games are about play, about creativity and pleasure.
So now let's go onto our list. Just for simplicity's sake, we are going to go in order of the zodiac. So we start from Aries and then we go and end with Pisces. If you have suggestions about other video games for that sign specifically, please leave them in the comments below. There might be overlaps in video game recommendations because they're giant systems and they involve a lot of things. So of course they're going to appeal to different types of people. Like that's how you make money. So let's start with Aries. So just real quickly, Crystal, how would you describe an Aries energy?
Ooh, well, Aries is the baby of the zodiac. It's about, like, I don't know, it is kind of like, I feel like a lot of Aries can get called impulsive or childish. They are cardinal fire. They start things. They don't necessarily always finish them, but they do have this wellspring of ideas and acting on those ideas. So I think that when someone is called impetuous or childish or something, well, that's a compliment because there is wisdom in being the first and being a young child. And Aries certainly reminds us to live fast and actually do something about things. Like, they're like, I just want to they have like the fire under their ass. They can't sit still and they can be really fiery and like everyone knocks on them for that. But I think it's a great trait. So yeah.
Yeah. So the recommendations that I had, in wanting this nonstop action and also with the fact that Aries are more about being starters as opposed to maintainers or finishers is games that are about nonstop action or games that are easy to hop in and out of necessarily. Like games that don't require too much commitment per se, not to say that they can't commit. So I picked games like Bayonetta, which it literally is marketed with nonstop action, that phrasing. Mirror's Edge, just because it's actually a game about parkour, and I just figured that Aries would really like that energy. I feel like parkour is a very
Aries thing to want to do. Like, just run and jump off shit and just think about and just do all that shit.
Yeah, and like kind of think more on an instinctual level, because like that's what good parkour is, right? It's kind of like just being able to improvise with your body in a way.
Definitely, and I think Aries are very good at improvising.
Hopefully this isn't a freebie. This doesn't feel like too easy, but I definitely feel just fighting games like Super Smash Brothers or Marvel vs. Capcom or Soul Calibur, just because.
Yeah, especially like think about the age a lot of people start playing like Super Smash Bros. Or do Mario stuff in general. It's always when you're really young.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be super sophisticated to just start. So that's a good one too, I think.
Also, you had this great suggestion of suggesting Wii Sports. Fire energy they do enjoy physical activity more than other signs, from what I understand, and so definitely games like Wii Sports or Dance Central or Just Dance probably would also appeal to them too, if not all the fire signs. So now we have Taurus.
So I think that Taurus, they're very about persevering, and slow and steady wins the race. They're not necessarily slow, but they do kind of understand the process of life in terms of making material gains, getting to where you need to be, building things from the ground up and being like, oh yeah, this is the foundation and stuff. And they can be very like sensual because they are ruled by Venus, but they're not like about balance like a Libra would be. They're more like about hard work paying off and doing it in a way that's very like intentional. But you're not like thinking a lot when you're Taurus. You're just doing and going toward where you need to be.
I was very excited to do Taurus because I was talking about Animal Crossing to Crystal and she immediately was like, oh, that's a Taurus game. That's definitely a Taurus game.
Yeah, all the people that like it have like some kind of weird ass Taurus energy.
Yeah, it's interesting because Animal Crossing literally like deals with, the earth and like, trees and flowers and digging stuff up. It's just naturally a very slow moving game unless you time travel, which I don't do that.
But you have to persevere to make it through. You have to be patient and watch your investments pay off and go through all that, and I don't have time for that.
Right. It's also a very materialistic game because it's all about collecting items and buying things. So I would say that we'll get into Libra, but like it's a very Venus energy game. It's a very slow moving game, obviously, because you can only do so much to make your island better every day. I also recommended Kingdom Hearts because it's just very pretty. Any Final Fantasy game I think is very pretty and will appeal to a Taurus because not just because it looks good because it's a AAA Square Enix game, but also because some of these games are turn-based, and that kind of appeals to maybe like the slower pace of a Taurus, possibly.
They have time to really mull over their next move.
Exactly, yeah. But it doesn't get too complicated to the point where like it's like a top-down strategy, like chess moving type of game.
Yeah, it's like you just have to keep having the patience to move through it.
I think you were talking earlier about how just anything with like a deeper backstory, like something that they can really like dig their heels into slowly, which is also very Kingdom Hearts, because Kingdom Hearts' lore is very complicated. Let's move on to Gemini.
Okay, so they're not two-faced, even though there's twins. I just think Geminis are very quick-moving mentally. They just know how to go for what they need. Like, not like go for what they need in like a material way, but like they always need to know information. Like, you know, Geminis aren't gossipy, but they just like to know things. And so they're very mentally agile. And I do think that anyone complaining about a Gemini is just not used to how fast they move and their pace. And like, I think that they just represent the duality of balancing multiple perspectives, which is why they can seem wishy-washy. They're not really. They're just really holding true to how life moves, which is in little spurts of information. So yeah.
Yeah, so for Gemini, I came up with Yakuza, Watch Dogs, and Assassin's Creed and Ghost of Tsushima. Maybe any open world game, because they like being able to balance a lot of things. They like having a lot of pots on the stove, as you would say. It's interesting because from what I understand, like when you compare like a Gemini with a Sagittarius, is that Geminis, like when we talk about like exploration or like traveling, because they do have that parallelness, but from what I understand from listening to people like Hannah from Hannah's Elsewhere, Geminis are actually more interested because of the rulership over the third house, right? Is that they like exploring like their immediate space in a way, or their immediate city. I picked Yakuza because you kind of really get to understand like this very small prefecture in Japan. It's not like this huge, gratuitous, like I'm gonna go everywhere type of energy. It's more like I'm gonna get like a really good understanding of like the culture of this city, and just and really get to know like the people that live in this city too.
Yeah, I think if it's like niche enough, like if it's niche, like, oh, no one else is doing it this way, that would intrigue someone who's a Gemini. Like,
interesting. So that would probably mean getting some indie games then. Yeah, so Watchdog, those games also take place in specific cities. I think they'd really like Assassin's Creed, because that's also a place, because you can use those games to also like actually learn about that era and that place that the games take place in. I've actually learned a lot about, you know, Renaissance Italy, Egypt, France during the Revolution period because of Assassin's Creed. And then let's move on to Cancer.
they're kind of like the mama of the Zodiac, like the mother in general. The moon is the mother, and the moon rules Cancer. And so I think that any homebody, I think of them as active homebodies. Like, they're trying to make the home a really great place to dwell in. And any Cancer I've met can be extremely hospitable and very considerate and just very, I don't know, like when people say Cancers can be like romantics, I've actually never resonated with that, because I think that they just really understand the essentials to a partnership. So I guess Cancer energy in general is just there to remind us of finding our sense of home and nurturing it, even for ourselves. Like, not doing it always for other people, but doing it for us especially too. That's like the biggest lesson I think Cancer has to offer.
I picked Ori and the Blind Forest because it's kind of like that. It's like that partnership type of energy. I just, and also just the look, it just feels very Cancerian to me. Celeste, I really like. And we also have The Walking Dead. I hope that this one doesn't feel too easy to, but like you're literally like taking care of this young girl in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. And it's kind of interesting making these choices of like, because you basically have to take on this father role to this young girl because both of her parents died.
I feel like people would have heard that and been like, The Walking Dead? Do you even astrology, bro? But like, I think that that's valid. Like, what would you type The Walking Dead as? Because it's not like you're just like a zombie killer assassin. You also have this other more heartfelt backstory, you know?
So now we're going to move on to Leo, which I know that you are familiar with since you have a Leo moon.
Yay! I love Leo because, as Chris said, I have a Leo moon. And I guess my spiel on Leo is like, again, I have to debunk some stereotype stuff. I really don't think that like Leo moons, or no, just a Leo energy is conceited or overly dramatic. I just think that Leos really recognize and know themselves, and they understand that idea of having an identity and a dog in the fight that is life. And so I don't view them as necessarily being self-centered in that negative way, but I think of them as self-orbiting. Like they are always thinking of their relation to like what's going on, who they are, all that stuff. And so if you threaten a Leo's ego, whether healthy or unhealthy, they're gonna step up to defend it in some way. Even the most like introverted, beat up by life Leos, they have a sense of self. Whether they share that with you, totally different. But like, I guess they are like obsessed with themselves, but I mean that in the most neutral sense of the word, where you're obsessed with like knowledge of thyself, or like what is the self, and they're thinking about others as selves and their self. So even if you meet the most benevolent, open Leo and you're like, oh, this is like a Leo, they're still maybe empathizing via that sense of self, if that makes sense. Because I know you have the opposite.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because Persona 5 also does have like a slight Aquarius energy to it, but it's funny because, yeah, they're opposites, but I would say it's more Leo just because it's such a loud, confident game in a way. Like, it's like the most confident iteration of the Persona series. Everything is so loud and colorful, and like everything is just designed so beautifully. And this is with all Persona games, but I feel like with Persona 5 the most, you get that sense of like everybody that's around you, your teammates, just think that you're really special, and like they really, really like you, and they're like, yeah, like we really look to you and depend on you to like guide us.
Yeah, exactly. Like the sun can't help but shine on other people, but the sun also needs other people to witness its shine so it can do stuff with the shine.
So the Spider-Man games and the Batman games, the good ones, not the bad ones, Dragon Age and Mass Effect, I think are very, very easy recommendations for Leo games as well. Oh, let's move on to Virgo, which I'm very familiar with because I have 3 planets in Virgo.
Very able to work with details, for better or for worse. Very able to kind of keep track of, I think, the progression of how a job is getting done, how things are going. Very progress oriented in terms of they always want to be making steady progress. They know how to be comprehensive and contextual about details. So they'll either nag you to death or they'll be able to make sure everything is taken care of for something. And they can be really considerate, because if someone wasn't keeping track of all the details, who would be, you know?
As a Virgo, I felt very confident in my recommendations. I was like, yeah, any puzzle game is probably really great.
Oh my God,
I obviously
yes.
don't just like puzzle games, but I do enjoy games like Portal. I think that's a super easy recommendation. Swapper, the 999 game series. I would also say Fire Emblem, because it's a very, like any type of top-down like grid strategy game, I think they would also like, because that's also like a puzzle in its own way, just like not like a you click the parts in kind of puzzle. All right, I also feel like Fire Emblem would work well for Virgo because it would appeal to the more social and caring side of Virgo that isn't usually emphasized. And there are a lot of people to care about in Fire Emblem. So let's move on to Libra.
Yeah, I think Libras are all about balance. They're all about harmony. But they also are the sign that rules like the justice system and like, you know, scales, balance, all of that. But Libras kind of get a rap for being chill, but maybe a pushover. But I think that in the name of harmony, they also symbolize truth, right? Because truth rules justice, which rules ultimately how to be harmonious. It's about fairness. So I think that if you really light a Libra up, they can get preachy. Like Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez is a Libra. They really do know how to think critically about what's fair when push comes to shove. Like if you threaten maybe a Libra's ego, they're like, oh yeah. But if you threaten someone else, they're like, hey, what the crap? And I really like that about them. They aren't really that pushovery. They have a stronger ideology than you realize, but you get access to it only in limited capacities.
Like I said before with the Taurus, because Venus rules both Taurus and Libra, I still think that Animal Crossing is such a great recommendation for Libras and Tauruses. I wanted to credit this thought with Milkstrology because she was the one that mentioned it to me first, and that's what got me thinking about this. Animal Crossing is like you work hard and you design your island to like really represent yourself and to be beautiful and to be balanced in that type of way, and Libras do care about beauty and in a sense, right? Like not like, would you call it vanity per se? Like where do you think that beauty comes from?
Because I think they want the accurate perception of themselves being out there. So it's like, oh, like if I put on makeup or put my best foot forward, people are gonna that communicates something to people. And it's about balance, because it's like, oh, like if I'm not putting in my best effort, how can I expect that from other people?
We also talked about how Libras might really like MMORPGs, like MapleStory maybe. Aesthetically pleasing MMORPGs, and they wouldn't be begrudging about it. They'd be like, okay, that's cool. I'll be the healer, because like not that many people want to do that, because like not that many people want to like help other people. They just want to do fancy explosions and kill shit. Right? I would also suggest for Libra, The Witcher and Tales of Symphonia, because I mean both of those games have a very interesting type of aesthetic. And something interesting about Tales of Symphonia that I thought about very recently is that, Tales of Symphonia is all about like exploring the sense of justice, uprooting fake justice, and also creating like literally like a quest to create balance in the world. So let's move on to Scorpio.
Well, I am a Scorpio rising, so I do know a bunch about it, but I do think it's about like the dark underbelly of everything. Scorpios just know how to handle intensity. Like you don't have to be like wearing goth eyeliner to be identified as a Scorpio. But I think that if you say something really dark to a Scorpio, they're like, yeah, it makes sense. Like they just really understand that kind of aspect of life as inevitable.
I think Scorpios get annoyed when people like just don't want to say something because they are afraid it'll disturb or like shake things up too much. But Scorpio is like, but why would you want to avoid that when it's the fucking truth?
Yeah, pretty much. Like life is too short to try to water it down, because it's inevitable that we're all going to die. So you might as well make the most of it.
So yeah, so with Scorpio, Scorpios I know really enjoy secrets. They really enjoy like connecting with people through secrets and kind of just feeling like they have like a very special connection with people, or just feeling like special in that type of way.
Me. Yeah, I love hearing everyone's dark secrets.
I think it's pretty easy to recommend dark games, obviously, or mystery games. So LA Noire, like exploring mysteries, like murder mysteries from the 50s, and Bloodborne, because it's a very, very dark game. I think Scorpios would love it. I think Phoenix Wright would also be a great game if you're not too into gore as a Scorpio, because that's also like a mystery solving game. I think Scorpios really enjoy that satisfaction of like pointing out a flaw in somebody's story and being like, you lied about this, and then they're like, oh shit, We can move on to Sagittarius if there isn't anything else you want to say.
Basically, I feel like Sagittarians are very philosophically free. They care a lot about the concept of freedom existing, but it's like more of an intellectual sort of freedom. They are associated with like travel and philosophy, and I think that's no coincidence, because when you travel, your philosophy shifts a lot because you're going through so many experiences. So I think that a lot of Sagittarius energy has to do with that. They're very mutable, very fiery. They aren't like necessarily hungry for intellectual information the way Gemini is. They're more like, how can I convince you to see it my way? How can I manipulate you? Not manipulate, persuade you to this way of life. So they embody their philosophy. They go, I'm going to persuade you to think this way. And they do that. And I think they get a stereotype of being conniving when really they're just really strong-willed, but in this way that's very shady, because it's not like consistently like they're just on a podium saying stuff. They're just here to be behind the scenes, letting you know, planting seeds of whatever they're on. So yeah.
So the first game that I thought of when I saw Sag was No Man's Sky, because it's not just like traveling your local city like a Gemini. It's like you literally like get to explore the universe almost indefinitely if you wanted to, and I feel like that's a very Sag type of energy. Oh
yeah, for sure. It is about exploratory stuff.
And even though No Man's Sky does have a bad rap now, I have heard that they improved it and it actually is quite good now. So yeah, that's great.
Sag would want to explore the curiosity. They'd be like, oh, is it good? I guess I'll go and find out.
Great point. Also, I would say that Hitman, because Hitman is like, everything is very episodic. You don't have to do like that much like boring stuff. And each stage of Hitman takes place in like a different country, basically. So like that's also like a lot of exploration. I would also say Disco Elysium, just because that is also a very philosophical game. And I think Sagittarius would really revel in the fact that like you as this one person, you will get to make all of these multitude of choices to like shape this world that is kind of going through this very unstable time and it needs to restabilize, but you have power to choose how to restabilize it.
Sagittarius do want to make an impact. They really care about that. And they want to make an impact via their philosophy.
Capricorn.
Wow, I love them. We work so hard. I really do think that we are kind of the timekeepers. We get stereotyped as being workaholics, but really we just want to excel in the best way possible at what we are good at. So if I'm a Capricorn and I want to be like a manic pixie dream girl, I'm going to be the best manic pixie dream girl ever. Or if I want to be a stoner, I'm going to be the best stoner ever. I'm going to stone so hard. Like, and it won't be good in terms of what other people think of you. It's good in terms of what you think of you. Very hardworking, very bossy, very about how do we measure our success and our progress and how are we making, like they are kind of the sign of career, but I don't think of it as that. I think of it more as livelihood. Like, what truth are you living out and what purpose do you serve, like as a person? Because you don't want to be useless to whatever societal standards you're measuring up to.
The whole reason why they operate is because they're like, I want to just use this life to the best that I can because I know that my time is limited.
Yeah, seriously. I have worked so hard throughout my life at like creating a life in which I'm proud of everything I am doing at any given time. Even if I'm not rich or even if I don't have that many friends, did I live in a way that felt like my personal integrity?
Competitive games would probably be a great recommendation or a great place to start.
I am competitive, but I try not to admit I am because then people would know I was competitive and then they would become more competitive. But if I get them down, they aren't expecting it.
When we were playing Jackbox, which I also think I would recommend for my birthday last year, you were initially like, I don't like playing this. But then when you started doing well, you were like, okay, I like this.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, haha, well, now it's fun.
Yeah, so Overwatch, Super Smash Brothers, Valorant, Fortnite. Let's move on to Aquarius, one of my favorite signs because I have an Aquarius moon.
Yeah, because it's your moon. My Mercury's in Aquarius, so I have a very fond soft spot for that. I think that I really resonate with how people describe Aquarius as being futuristic. I think that almost fits more than just saying, oh, they really care about society. Because I think they care about society if it's like progressing forward. Like if it's like a society that's like stagnant, they're like, ew, no, we gotta stop this, we gotta change this. And they care a lot, but they don't care in like a watery way. They don't care in an emotional way. They care more in a, well, you should care kind of way. And I think that's really important for progress. In a sense, they also embody truth, but truth in a universal agreed upon form.
We've had many of a difficult conversation regarding how I really don't like when people don't see things my way because I'm like, well, I've thought about it so much and like, this is just like what it is. So like, why can't you see it?
Yeah, and see, I feel like you're not literally being controlling like, because I'm just better. It's more like, how come it's not registering to my airiness? Like why this is,
yeah,
I don't understand. Yeah. Help me understand. And everyone's like, stop being so intellectual.
I would say that Orwell is a really, really great recommendation. It's more of an indie game, but like it deals in technology, which I also think that Aquarius is associated with sometimes. And it's kind of about like this commentary about, you know, like social media and like, you know, being used as like a surveillance tool. I think Aquarius would be very into that. Anything social commentary, anything philosophical also like Sagittarius. Like I feel like both Sag and Aquarius would enjoy Nier Automata, Danganronpa, and also the Fallout games. I'm putting in the Fallout games and not the Skyrim games because like since Aquarius is attached to the future, like Skyrim is like medieval scene and like
oh yeah, practically
and, like,
yeah.
Aquarius is like post-apocalyptic, like after like future-ish type of situation.
Yeah, it's like society, but only there's a commentary, only there's change. Otherwise, we're like, who cares about tradition?
Okay, so last but not least, we have Pisces.
So Pisces is very esoteric. It's very dreamy. It's very about, it's like the opposite of Virgo, so they both care about detail. But I think Pisces does it from a more imaginative standpoint. It's very like caught up in the vision. Let's make it like real. When we say real, I mean like flesh it out. In terms of actually executing on it to make it real, I don't think they're very good at that. But I do think they like the immersive part of idealizing things, which is a very actually useful mechanism because without idealization, you can't create a better reality because reality isn't just sensing, it's also intuition and all that stuff.
Virgo and Pisces are both kind of about like serving, right? Like they're about like
oh, helping. Absolutely, yes. Helping. Giving, not receiving.
I feel like Pisces would really appreciate artsy games that are post-verbal games. Yeah, Journey or Flower, like those are games that don't have words. They're just like very artsy and like they can interpret it however they want to. They can put their own meaning onto it. Transistor is also kind of a commentary about the collective. Like it's this really interesting world. It is like a technologically advanced world, but it's very dreamy. The art is beautiful, and it also talks about how like the flaws of a society where like if we all could just vote on how the weather was going to be, or like what would be played on TV, like how boring and how like samey and how like dissolved we would be into each other if like that was our society. Which
I
feels
feel like
very
Pisces would love to contemplate that. They'd be like, I don't know, what would that be like? What is collectivism? I don't know. So yeah.
Maybe would say like because of the whole collective aspect, I would also say MMORPGs too, just because like they can feel like, oh, like I get to interact with so many people and I get to like be part of like this giant player base. Crystal, thank you so much for sitting with me through all of this.
Yay! That was fun. Let's do more Astro Talks about something.
Yeah, completely. I know that this took us a lot of, and you especially, like a lot of time and energy in your very busy schedule, so I really appreciate your generosity and your knowledge base. Tell the people where they can find you and your work.
Yeah, so people can find me on Instagram at Crystal, CrystalXduan. If you search my name on YouTube, you'll find a few videos I've posted or others have posted of me discussing the Myers-Briggs personality types, which is also something I specialize in. But if you want to book a reading or talk to me about ways that you can use tarot and spirituality and personality type to improve how you approach life, feel free to send me a DM, feel free to follow me.
If you have more suggestions on whether or not something would fit or not, please let me know. I was very excited as my Aquarius to look through the internet and be like, oh, nobody has done this yet. Oh, this is perfect.
Somehow no one has.
I can do this.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. But yeah, thanks for having me, Chris.
Thanks so much, Crystal.